Welcome back to Panda Audiobooks. We have surpassed the 250 chapter milestone, and the silence at the base of the Eclipse Pillar is more terrifying than any war cry. In our last episode, Jian Wushuang shattered the laws of time itself, defeating Sovereign Kronos and finally laying eyes on his father, trapped within the tower's crystalline heart. Today, the throne descends. Chapters 251 through 255 bring us the moment we've been building toward since the very first chapter. The divine sovereign has stepped off his high throne, appearing not as a man, but as a being made of pure, blinding celestial light. To free his father, Wushuang must do the unthinkable. He must intentionally overload his heavenly creation skill, turning his own body into a living conduit for the pillar's destructive energy. It's a battle of immortals' will against a god's ego. Chapter 251 starts right now. Chapter 251, The Starlight Sword Array. Too fast. Jian Wushuang moved so fast that it took some time for people to notice that he appeared beside Mo Lingtian. Mo Lingtian, however, did notice, but before he reacted, Jian Wushuang's palm already landed on his face. Puff! With a single move from Jian Wushuang, Mo Lingtian spat a mouthful of blood. He shot back like a shell and violently crashed into the drill ground, which made the area shake so much that cracks appeared. Senior brother Lingtian. Seeing this, the man and the lady that Mo Lingtian brought were shocked to the core. Mo Lingtian struggled to stand up slowly with a disreputable state. His chest was swollen like a bun, blood could be dimly seen in the corner of his mouth, and his whole body was shaking uncontrollably. By then, his eyes were started turning icy. It's just 7 months since we met last time. How could he have increased his strength like this? Mo Lingtian was astounded by Jian Wushuang. Then he looked at the man and the lady next to him and said seriously, "This fellow is a little bit odd. Let's display the Starlight Sword Array together and then kill him." Starlight Sword Array? The man and the lady were shocked. The Wilderness Sword sect was well known for the sword principle. The sect not only owned a large number of transcendent swordsmanship and sword skills, but also owned some sword formations. The sword formations were extraordinary and gained a good fame in the entire Nanyang continent. Normally, these sword formations were used to against the powerful enemies. However, Jian Wushuang was just at the initial completion of Yang Void Realm. Was it necessary for 3 experts of the peak of Yang Void Realm to activate the sword formation by joining hands? Don't underestimate him. Hurry up, Mo Lingtian said without stopping. The man and the lady nodded heavily, and moved into action without hesitation. Whoosh! 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 The 3 figures instantly stood together side by side, followed by the burst of 3 sword essences. In no time the sword essences directly beamed into the sky. Ha! Jian Wushuang held his head up, and looked at the 3 with astonishment. Show him what we are capable of. As soon as Mo Lingtian threw a deep roar, the 3 figures violently glided up at once, and in no time appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. A second later, the 3 slashed their swords simultaneously. Hooah! 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 3 streaks of sword light lashed out. Each one was extremely dazzling and held incredible power. The moment the sword light rushed forward, the 3 streaks of sword light merged into one as if they were launched by a single person. The integrated sword light got more and more dazzling, as it was flying towards Jian Wushuang in a much fiercer state. Jian Wushuang was holding an ordinary cyan-colored long sword in his hand. Seeing the sword light getting closer, he moved his wrist and fiercely slashed his long sword out. The 4th move of selfless sword technique. He activated the origin of the world. Thud! The 2 sword lights collided together, leaving an almighty bang behind. Ha! Jian Wushuang was a little bit shocked. He could tell there was a force bypassing his attack and coming in close contact with him. However, he couldn't help taking a few steps backwards. After retreating for dozens of meters, Jian Wushuang regained his balance, held up his head and set his eyes upon Mo Lingtian and his companions at the front. Sword formation? There was a surprised look in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Kill him! Mo Lingtian's eyes were icy. With a snarl, the 3 displayed their movements simultaneously again. Interesting. Jian Wushuang sneered. He immediately moved up to them. Boom! The horrible sword essence broke out again. Due to the strength of the sword formation, Mo Lingqian and his two comrades seemed to have integrated into one person. They grabbed the sword simultaneously, and by then, both the swordsmanship power and the sword speed got greatly increased. The three were all at the peak of Yang Void Realm, which already afforded them an upper hand. Now joint fight made their battle strength reach an even higher level. However, at this moment, Jian Wushuang activated World Origin and Slaughter Origin simultaneously and engaged himself in the fierce fight. In a short time, it was hard to tell who had the upper hand over the other. Is the sword formation that powerful? Jian Wushuang pondered in surprise. If Mo Lingqian and his two comrades fought with Jian Wushuang individually, all of them would be easily killed by Jian Wushuang. Even if the three allied but did not display the sword formation, Jian Wushuang could handle them calmly and kill them one by one. But now they were displaying the sword formation and seemed like a single person. This greatly enhanced their overall strength. Even though Jian Wushuang already activated the World Origin and Slaughter Origin, he still did not have an upper hand. Jian Wushuang was surprised, while Mo Lingqian and his comrades were shocked. We already displayed the Starlight Sword Array by allying together. How is it possible we still can't kill him? He is just at the initial Yang Void Realm. Why is his strength comparable to us three? Origin, he comprehended the origin, and he comprehended more than one. What's more, his strength is stronger than the ordinary initial Yang Void Realm. I am afraid his strength is as good as the exceptional Yang Void Realm right now. How is that possible that there is such a powerful expert of the initial Yang Void Realm in this world? Mo Lingqian and his comrades all felt it was inconceivable. After all, they had already used the Starlight Sword Array. They could even defeat Dan Yi, an expert at the peak of the Yang Void Realm who comprehended the origin. However, they couldn't defeat Jian Wushuang, who was merely at the initial Yang Void Realm. Your sword formation is indeed excellent, Jian Wushuang suddenly said. Mo Lingqian and his comrades looked toward Jian Wushuang at once. But it's over. Jian Wushuang's eyes were icy. He moved his wrist and got his cyan long sword inserted into the interspatial ring. A second later, he slowly pulled out the triple kill sword that he carried in the back. No sooner had he drew the triple kill sword out from its sheath, a scary killing intent spread out. Mo Lingqian and his comrades darkened their faces. H&H, he changed a sword, so what? Mo Lingqian sneered. Don't waste time on him, just use the unique skill. Let's do it. With a monstrous breath, the three figures fiercely glided out again. Go to hell! Mo Lingqian shouted. At that moment, the three all displayed their own unique skill. Instantly, three towering sword shadows could be seen bursting out almost at the same time. The unique skills they displayed were different, but the power activated by these skills were all earth-shaking. The moment the power was activated, the experts standing outside the Heartless Island immediately looked toward them. Even the experts who were fiercely fighting in the Heartless Island right now also threw their eyes over one after another. A second later, the three sword lights, each having immeasurable power, were instantly combined into one. All of a sudden, the sword light became twinkling and dazzling, as if it was a ray of starlight in the dark void. Rumble! The cold sword light pierced through the air, and was tearing everything in heaven and earth. Soon after, it appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang looked cold. Feeling the chill heavy wind, he instantly slashed his triple kill sword out. Buzzing! The towering sword essence was just activated. Then Jian Wushuang slowly waved the triple kill sword down. He was displaying the fifth move of the selfless sword technique. The fifth move was called Blood Rupturing Movement. Unlike the previous four moves, the Blood Rupturing Movement mostly relied on strength. The majestic sword shadow was immediately activated. This was a very slow slash, as if it didn't contain any strength. However, when it collided with the dazzling sword light that Mo Lingqian and his comrades displayed, boom! The horrible roar was heard, and it shook the area so much. A second later, the majestic sword shadow just overwhelmingly smashed the sword light to pieces. Then the sword shadow continued to move toward Mo Lingqian and his comrades. Chapter 252 displayed the movements. Boom! The majestic sword essence kept rolling, and made Mo Lingqian and his comrades violently retreat one after another. The starlight sword array was immediately disintegrated. No sooner had the dignified lady, who was part of the three, regained her balance than a figure appeared beside her like a ghost. What? The dignified lady was stunned. She struggled to turn around and saw a cold sword light flash before her eyes. The light got closer and closer, and left the lady no time to resist it. Kai! The sword light ruthlessly passed over the dignified lady. She was killed by Jian Wushuang without having a second to emit a scream. Jian Wushuang didn't stop his advance. He bounded up again and appeared next to the black-haired middle-aged man. Seeing this, the black-haired middle-aged man suddenly shrunk his eyes. He saw how the dignified lady got killed by Jian Wushuang a while ago. The lady was no weaker in terms of strength. Buzzing! There came another beautiful and mournful sword light. The black-haired middle-aged man widened his eyes, and his face was filled with a hint of frenzy. At this point, he slashed his sword out in panic, hoping he could stop the sword light. However, the result was not in his favor. The sword light mercilessly streaked from the black-haired middle-aged man, and his long sword was directly sheared off in the middle. Without a pause, the sword light continued cutting across the man's throat. How could it be possible? The black-haired middle-aged man felt it was unbelievable even at the last minute before he died. How could his blade just be cut into 2 pieces by Jian Wushuang's sword? Having killed 2 peak of the Yang Void Realm experts in succession, Jian Wushuang now focused his eyes upon Mo Lingtian. By then, Mo Lingtian was already freaking out. Junior brother Luo and junior sister Yu. Mo Lingtian looked extremely frightened. Only 7 months have passed. How could have this fellow enhance his strength like this in such a short time? Mo Lingtian felt it was incredible. When he noticed Jian Wushuang's eyes upon him, he instantly could feel that he skipped a beat. Run! At this point, Mo Lingtian just turned around and ran away without any hesitation. He was running to where Qi Luosheng was. While running, he shouted, "Tower Master Qi, help me, help me!" The wicked figure Qi Luosheng had been sitting on the raised platform on the drill ground. He coldly gave Mo Lingtian a glance and said scornfully, "What trash the people in the Wilderness Sword sect are. No wonder they are about to lose the position of one of the 8 top sects." He still stood up slowly. As soon as he stood up, an intense sense of power was instantly engulfing the area. Having felt the strong force, the experts who were fiercely fighting on the entire field of the Heartless Island couldn't help but stop and look in awe. Countless eyes were fixed upon Qi Luosheng. "You finally decided to get up." Jian Wushuang half closed his eyes and stared at Qi Luosheng. Qi Luosheng was the Tower Master of the Blood Feather Tower. His rank was that of a divine transcendence. The fight had been going on for quite a long time. However, Qi Luosheng hadn't displayed any sign of interest. That is until now. Divine transcendence. He was finally about to take action. A top expert of divine transcendence, how powerful can he be? Outside the Heartless Island, a large number of experts from different sects were excitedly staring at Qi Luosheng. In the Qianzong dynasty, the divine transcendence could be called a legend. Everybody knew that such an expert had accumulated incredible strength and skills. However, no one knew the extent of his power. Most of the experts present, including the Yin-Yang Void Realm experts, had never seen a divine transcendence expert display a movement before. But finally, they would have the chance to see it. Divine transcendence. Jian Wushuang's eyes were glistening. By no time, there was a monstrous battle intent rising up. Feeling the battle intent, Qi Luosheng on the raised platform threw a sneer on his face. He then bounded up and appeared 10 meters away in front of Jian Wushuang. Qi Luosheng was just levitating on the void and overlooking Jian Wushuang. "You don't feel scared in front of me. Instead, your battle intent is so violent right now. You have a lot of guts. I don't. I just want to see how strong the divine transcendence top expert is." Jian Wushuang stretched out his tongue and licked his lips as if signifying his desire to experience true power. The battle intent was enormous. "Ha ha, do you think you are qualified to see my real strength?" Qi Luosheng sneered, followed by the display of his 3 fingers, 3 finger points. "If you can survive from my 3 fingers, then you are qualified to see my real strength." There was a tinge of obvious condescension in Qi Luosheng's words. However, none of the experts present could ignore his arrogance, because he was divine transcendence. Divine transcendence and yin-yang void realm were completely two different concepts. How strong the expert in such level would be? 3 fingers? Jian Wushuang sneered. Then I will wait and see. I won't let you down. Qi Luosheng lightly smiled. A second later, he lifted his fingers. Watch it, this is the first finger. No sooner had Qi Luosheng uttered the words than he stretched out one of his right fingers. It was a simple and casual pointing. However, as soon as he pointed his finger out, a horrible breath pervaded in the air at once. The void in front of Jian Wushuang was suddenly cut through, followed by the appearance of a giant finger. The huge finger was composed of the vast spiritual power. It sent forth an odd and violent breath, as if it extended from the ancient time. The moment the giant finger appeared, the experts on the Heartless Island were all shocked, horrified, and intrigued. The giant finger contained horrible power, and everybody felt frightened and trembling. At this moment, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but shrink his eyes. A second later, he fiercely slashed his triple kill sword out without hesitation. The 5th move of the selfless sword technique, blood-rupturing movement. World origin was completely activated. The majestic sword shadow that Jian Wushuang used to cut through Mo Lingqian's sword formation before burst out again at once, and it instantly collided with the giant finger. By no time, the two violent forces were just extruding immense power together. Rumble the void was shuddering, and the horrible power was splattering. However, suddenly, with a bang sound, the majestic sword shadow directly collapsed. Ha! Jian Wushuang was stunned. The giant finger continued pointing towards him, and he couldn't do anything except lifting his triple kill sword before his chest. A mighty bang was heard, and then Jian Wushuang's body was just destructively forced back. Jian Wushuang had been pushed back for a few hundred meters away, and he didn't keep stand on his feet until he was in the void over the edge of the Heartless Island. At this moment, his face was already pale. You warded off the first finger. Good. But I just activated 30% of my strength on this finger. For the second one, I will activate 60% of my strength. Chapter 253, The Might of the 3 Fingers. Every one of the countless experts in the Heartless Island couldn't help but be stunned at Qi Luosheng's words. Merely 30% power? That move just then, which struck fear deep in everyone's hearts, had only consisted of 30% of his strength? 30% power? Jian Wushuang shrunk his eyes. It seemed that the divine transcendence expert was much more frightening than he had imagined. He had used every ounce of his strength implementing his blood-rupturing movement to fend off that move just then. And yet he was still at an enormous disadvantage. With only one finger, Qi Luosheng had used 30% of his strength. If a move with 30% of strength was so powerful, then what about 60%? All right, boy, get ready for the second finger. I'm coming. Qi Luosheng laughed dully. Immediately, he extended a finger of his right hand. Rumble once again, the void in front of Jian Wushuang was split open. An enormous finger came, which was extruding power that felt as if it came from ancient times. In terms of strength, this was undoubtedly much stronger than the previous one. When it appeared, the power surrounding it seemed to have silenced both heaven and earth. Jian Wushuang concentrated his vision, preparing for the next attack. The next moment, his triple kill sword suddenly emitted dazzling light. The power of the inferior second-grade magic weapon broke out. The moment he held up the long sword, its power reached its limit. Then he violently thrust downwards. The 6th move of the selfless sword technique. The selfless sword technique attached the most importance to origin of the world and made each other stronger. Before, in the ancestors' land, passing through the rainstorm palace in contemplation, he had come to know the 4th and 5th move of selfless sword technique in succession and was only a small step from the 6th move. In the month after leaving the ancestors' land, at the same time as he massacred the Blood Feather Tower's stronghold, he finally grasped the 6th move. Now, he finally was able to put the 6th move to full use. The sword dazzled with incomparable brilliance. With one slash of the sword, it seemed as if it could cleave any living thing and the heavens themselves. However, Despite the awesomeness of this mighty sword, when faced with the oncoming attack of the ancient giant finger as they collided, there was a terrible rumble. In merely a flash, this incomparable and brilliant sword was summarily defeated. Bang! As the gigantic blast came forward, Jian Wushuang once more withdrew himself. This time, as he fell back, he spat a mouthful of fresh blood out. Under the attack of the finger with 60% of strength, Jian Wushuang was already seriously injured. Still one finger left. Qi Luosheng's gaze was indifferent as he glanced at Jian Wushuang. With this final finger, I'll use 90% of my strength. You should take it well. As Qi Luosheng's words trailed off, his third finger immediately came out. Boom! The void atop Jian Wushuang suddenly had a large hole split in it. Then a giant finger stretched through that hole and moved toward Jian Wushuang. The power of the finger was much more frightening than the two that had come before. When this finger came forward, countless experts in the arena could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Such a finger was able to kill more than 10 experts at the peak of Yang Void Realm in an instant. Watching this finger, Jian Wushuang was shocked. Merely 60% of strength had caused him to be injured. Now 90% the power of the finger was nearly more than he could bear. No matter what, I need to do my best. Jian Wushuang lifted up his head, and in a split second ferociously burst forward with killing intent. Slaughter origin enveloped his whole body, causing him to look like a peerless Shura that had come from hell. He lifted the triple-kill sword once again. The moment he raised up the long sword, the sword soul in his sea of consciousness madly trembled. Then a giant spectral image appeared behind his back. This spectral image was more than 100 feet tall, like a giant. His body stood straight and tall, coming into view with an ice-cold stare devoid of any emotion, staring straight at the heavens. This gaze seemed full of disdain for everything in the entire world. He stood behind Jian Wushuang, as if he was an unmatched god of war. This giant raised a huge sword, and slashed downwards as Jian Wushuang did. Blood-emptying technique, the first move, all-smashing stroke. The unmatched sword. Sword of killing. There was an immediate explosion. When it comes to offensive power, Slaughter Origin was stronger than World Origin. This blood-emptying technique was also Jian Wushuang's strongest move at present. Giving all that he had, his Slaughter Origin exploded with immense power. Even Qi Luosheng couldn't help but be stunned when he saw the stroke. However, he still sneered like before. Your swordsmanship is better than I thought. It's a shame that the difference in strength is so great. In the face of absolute power, it all means nothing. As his voice drifted off, the ancient giant finger that came from atop the void descended and slammed directly into the sword of killing. Boom! The heavens fell and the earth split asunder. A blast wave seemingly capable of destroying everything formed in the spot where the two of them collided with each other, madly spreading out. This blast wave swept out and reached many of the experts on the periphery. The Yin Void and even the Yang Void experts were shocked, and their bodies were involuntarily slammed back. Go to hell, Qi Luosheng said softly with cold eyes. Snap! Jian Wushuang's expression immediately changed as the giant behind him dissipated. The giant finger had pulverized his swordsmanship, and afterwards the merciless attacks on his body continued downwards. Finally, it violently hit the ground of the Heartless Island. Boom! The entire Heartless Island swayed, which had never happened before. After everything had settled, everyone couldn't help but look at the direct center of the Heartless Island. There appeared a giant circular pit more than dozens of meters in diameter. It was so deep that you could not see the bottom. Jian Wushuang fell into the lowest part of that pit. No one knew whether he was alive or dead. How terrible! This is the strength of a divine transcendence expert? No, he still hasn't used all of his abilities. Just then he only used 90%, but the results for all of the countless experts inside and out of the Heartless Island, this moment shook them to their core. The divine transcendence expert was so powerful and unbelievable. He was strong enough to make people choke in desperation. Is Jian Wushuang dead? The experts of each side were shaken, and they all simultaneously, one after the other, stared towards the bottom of the pit. Everyone was curious about whether Jian Wushuang could survive such a terrible attack. Brother! Wang Yuan and Su Ru had a worried look. At the same time, Jian Nantian, who had been lying on the drill ground and casually drinking, narrowed his eyes as he looked towards the pit. Qi Luosheng stood above the pit and coldly looked downward. Such a little expert of the initial Yang Void realm could make me use 90% of my strength. Even though you're dead, you should be proud. Qi Luosheng laughed coldly, but suddenly his laughter was cut off. Chapter 254, Devourment of Heaven and Earth, Soul-Devouring Secret Skill. Jian Wushuang was lying at the bottom of the giant pit. There were remnants of blood in his mouth. His face was deathly white. He felt a sharp pain throughout his entire body. The divine transcendence expert was quite powerful indeed. Fortunately, the heavenly creation skill has continuously remolded my body. It made all of the bones and muscles in my body much tougher and durable than the average warrior. Otherwise, the third finger would have finished me off, Jian Wushuang muttered. The power of the 3 fingers was earth-shattering. Under the attack of the 3 fingers, he was seriously injured. Can only rely on the final trump card, Jian Wushuang said with a twinkle of madness in his eyes. His most powerful trump card was Soul-Devouring Secret Skill. Soul-Devouring Secret Skill had saved his life from crises many times before. Now, the Soul-Devouring Secret Skill had become his final hope. Secret Skill Soul-Devouring, Jian Wushuang shouted. Then within his body there exploded out a violent and terrible power. The first volume of the Soul-Devouring Secret Skill absorbed all natural power within a 100-meter radius, and was extremely potent. However, the second volume of the Soul-Devouring Secret Skill was even more frightening. As the Soul-Devouring Secret Skill was performed, there was a rumble and the heavens and earth changed color. Under the gaze of the countless experts inside and out of the Heartless Island, an unprecedented terrific power exploded out from the bottom of the pit. Devourment of heaven and earth. In an instant, a giant engulfing whirlpool formed at the bottom of the giant pit. At this moment, a vast amount of natural power coming from all things of the universe headed towards that engulfing whirlpool. What's this? What is that? A whirlpool? Such frightening power to engulf everything. The countless experts on the edges were shaken as they watched this giant whirlpool appear. Everyone felt as if their hearts were going to leap out from their chests. Even when Qi Luosheng saw a giant swallowing whirlpool appear at the bottom, his face fell. Using your final trump card, eh? He knew Jian Wushuang was the type to have an ace up his sleeve, and was able to make his power rise sharply in a short span of time. However, this kind of trump card was not Qi Luosheng's concern at all. HMPH, you can only go up 1 level in regards to your own realm. Even if you can go from the initial Yang Void realm to profound Yang Void realm, then what? Qi Luosheng said with disdain. Jian Wushuang ever used this trump card before when he was in the easternmost hunting. He then elevated himself from the exceptional Gold Core realm to initial Yin Void realm, but he had only gone up 1 level. In Qi Luosheng's mind, by using this trump card Jian Wushuang could at best just go from the initial Yang Void realm to profound Yang Void realm. But he didn't know that Jian Wushuang just grasped the first volume of the Soul-Devouring Secret Skill when he was in the easternmost hunting. Now, he had grasped the second volume. Look around. Look at those trees. What's wrong? A voice cried in alarm. Everyone then saw that in the Heartless Island, a great number of flowers, plants, and trees all dried up one after the other. Just in an instant, all of them had been deprived of their life force. The ground of the Heartless Island was affected. The earth that had originally been full of vitality had become dry and yellow in an instant, to the point where cracks have started appearing as if a long drought befell the island. The Heartless Island that had previously been abundant with life had seemingly become a place of death in an instant. How big was the entire Heartless Island? No less than a considerable amount of miles. Could any skill really kill off an entire island of this size so quickly and efficiently? Everyone saw this act, and it was nearly enough to make their heads explode in a fit of terror. Once the entire Heartless Island's natural power had been swallowed up, the force of the giant swirling whirlpool at the bottom of the pit stood stagnated and then dissipated. Jian Wushuang, who had originally been lying down, slowly stood up. As he stood up, a frightening aura exploded out from his body. With the help of the first volume of the Soul-Devouring Secret Skill, he could merely swallow up all of the natural power within a radius of 100 meters. However, after performing the second volume, he devoured all of the natural power on the entire island without exception. His cultivation of spiritual power rose sharply in an instant. He had achieved the peak of the Yang Void Realm. Peak of Yang Void Realm. Jian Wushuang glanced at his palms and then clasped them together. A blast of cracking sounds came out as if he scratched the air. Going directly from the initial Yang Void Realm to the peak of the Yang Void Realm, he had advanced by no less than 3 levels, and this was all within the Yang Void Realm. In the Nanyang continent, there were some extremely powerful elixirs that could sharply increase one's power in a short span of time. With regards to Yang Void experts, there are limitations. They could improve 1 level at most. However, the soul-devouring secret skill had allowed Jian Wushuang to advance by 3 levels. How powerful! Of course, this potent secret technique placed also a heavy burden on the body. The natural power is too much. The longer I utilize the soul-devouring secret skill, the greater effect it has on my body. Jian Wushuang frowned and suddenly raised his head. Boom! With a terrifying aura, Jian Wushuang leapt out from the bottom of the pit, and once more appeared in front of Qi Luoxing. Immediately, his terrifying aura swept out and caused many of the experts around the perimeter to feel it. Such a strong aura. How could his cultivation of spiritual power improve to such an extent? All of that just then, that was all his doing? What on earth kind of method is this? A terrifying method. Numerous of the surrounding experts were all dumbstruck. As he watched Jian Wushuang's aura, Qi Luoxing was also astonished. Peak of the Yang Void Realm? But he still smiled just as before. Even with the cultivation of spiritual power advancement. Then what? In the end it's still only the Yang Void Realm. In the face of the Saint Realm, he's a mere ant and that's all. For this next move, I'll use full power. When Qi Luoxing finished speaking, a finger of his right hand once again slowly raised up. It just so happens that I also don't want to waste time, Jian Wushuang said coldly. The triple kill sword in his hand trembled with excitement. Behind him, the towering figure of the giant had once again emerged. It was still the first move of the blood-emptying technique, but in the wake of Jian Wushuang's sharp rise in cultivation of spiritual power, the power of the stroke had advanced to a truly terrifying state. The unmatched stroke once again descended. Qi Luoxing's finger extended and the giant finger lashed out once again. In a split second, the two terrifying powers collided with each other. It was as if 2 stars were colliding head-on. Slam! There was a world-shaking tremor. The earth quaked and the mountains shook. Swoosh! The awful blast waves viciously swept out. The entire Heartless Island started to violently shake. At the core of the collision, a streak of sword light flew off without warning. It mercilessly swept across the Heartless Island. Rumble! In an instant, the Heartless Island split in 2. Chapter 255, Half a Palm. What? Get out of this island as soon as possible. Oh, my God, the Heartless Island was split in 2. Countless experts were petrified at the sight of it. Indeed, the vast Heartless Island was split in 2 at the moment. If it was due to Jian Wushuang's or Qi Luoxing's attack on the Heartless Island, the onlookers would not be surprised for that to be the case. However, it was just because of the aftermath of the 2 of them colliding with each other. The wave could affect the island thousands of meters away. What did it mean? All of them were shocked. Many experts, who were having a fierce fight, retreated from the Heartless Island and left the battlefield for Jian Wushuang and Qi Luoxing. In the void over the island, 2 roaring powers were still up against each other. Their explosive power spread madly, which formed a great energy storm around them within a 100-meter radius. No one dared to intrude into this storm. Even an expert of Yang Void Realm might disappear once he entered it. In the center of the battlefield, Jian Wushuang looked cold, with continuous sword essence bursting out. Qi Luoxing's face fell slightly. He did not expect that his full attack would have been blocked by Jian Wushuang. Although Jian Wushuang improved his strength greatly, he remained at the peak of Yang Void Realm. There was a huge gap between his level and divine transcendence. However, Qi Luoxing did not know that Jian Wushuang had cultivated heavenly creation skill. It made him 10 times stronger than that of cultivation of spiritual power at the peak of Yang Void Realm. More importantly, Jian Wushuang comprehended origin more deeply than Qi Luoxing. Jian Wushuang's triple-kill sword was the inferior second-grade magic weapon, and the sword skill he displayed was superior third-grade. As for weapon and unique skill, Qi Luoxing was much weaker than Jian Wushuang. Qi Luoxing. Jian Wushuang suddenly spoke and looked towards Qi Luoxing with cold eye. Qi Luoxing slightly raised his head. Do you know I just struck the blow with 70% of my strength? Jian Wushuang said. What? Qi Luoxing was shocked. He had already tried his best to attack him, but Jian Wushuang just used 70% of his strength? How could it be possible? It's said that pay back in one's own coin. Now I will pay you back, Jian Wushuang said coldly, therefore, I'll let you know my full strength. Jian Wushuang instantly burst out his full strength. Thump. The sword shadow, who had been collided with the ancient giant finger, suddenly had immense roaring power. The two forces had been in stalemate, but now as the power of sword shadow increased greatly, the ancient giant finger immediately showed a sign of being in a huge disadvantage. Kai! 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 A hole was pierced in the center of the ancient giant finger, which was made of spiritual power. Then the giant finger lost its defense and was shattered in the blink of an eye. After the giant finger was crushed, the powerful force swept over. Qi Luoxing could not help but step back. When a figure suddenly appeared beside him, Qi Luoxing immediately felt a strong killing intent attack his body. This is bad. Qi Luoxing was scared, with a sense of crisis starting to emerge in his heart. Whoosh! A flash of sword shadow rushed towards him. After the sword shadow came out, the long sword was still shaking madly, letting out the echo of sword, as if it was extremely hungry. HMPH. After all, Qi Luoxing was the super expert of divine transcendence. Despite being faced with a crisis, he was still composed. A large quantity of spiritual power gathered in his left hand, and formed armor-like black crystals. Then he used it against the splendid sword shadow. Ridiculous! Jian Wushuang mocked. With the outburst of his strength, triple-kill sword emitted a cold light, slashing at the layer of the black crystals on Qi Luoxing's palm. When touching the crystals, the sword light just stopped for a second, and then cut through the layer of the black crystals, as if it was cutting a piece of tofu. It even hurt Qi Luoxing's palm. Kai! 5 fingers flying out at the same time. The sword. Qi Luoxing glanced at the long sword with a flicker of terror in his eyes. Then he retreated as far as possible. After stabilizing his stance, Qi Luoxing held his severed palm tightly. Crack! His blood-red wicked mask, which had been broken during the fight, cracked at this moment. An extremely old, ugly face showed up. His face was completely distorted. A large number of warriors out of the Heartless Island were immediately exhilarated. They were shocked at Jian Wushuang's strength. Jian Wushuang cut off a palm of a super expert of divine transcendence. They were also shocked at Qi Luoxing's face. It was unexpected that an old ugly woman was the Tower Master of Blood Feather Tower. Unexpectedly, the legendary Tower Master of Blood Feather Tower is an old woman. Jian Wushuang held triple-kill sword, with the soaring sword essence. At this moment, he had appeared beside Jian Nantian. The magic weapon? Jian Wushuang, you are just at the Yang Void Realm. How can you own such a weapon? From the power of the weapon, it might not be a usual third-grade magic weapon. Qi Luoxing Slight raised her head with her distorted look. She looked at triple-kill sword with a flicker of fear and fever in her eyes. The magic weapons were definitely treasures in the Nanyang continent. Expert for Jian Wushuang, no one in the Qianzong dynasty had magic weapons. She had noticed that the long sword was extraordinary, but she did not expect that the sword was a magic weapon. With the help of this weapon, Jian Wushuang had just cut off her palm. However, you are too naive if you thought you would be able to leave this island alive. Qi Luoxing suddenly laughed hideously. Ha! Jian Wushuang squinted, with an ominous presentiment. Master Xiao Nan, it's your turn. Qi Luoxing spoke in a low voice. The moment Qi Luoxing finished her words, a terrifying power suddenly swept over from a corner of the Heartless Island. The power was much stronger than that from Qi Luoxing, who attacked with her full strength. In the blink of an eye, the whole Heartless Island went still. All people present were terrified. No one expected that another divine transcendence was on the heartless island. The man was even stronger than Qi Luosheng. And with that world-shattering crack in the sovereign's armor, we conclude chapter 255. Wushuang has managed to strike the god of the higher realms, but the cost has been devastating. His father is free from the crystal, but the Eclipse Pillar has begun to self-destruct, threatening to wipe out the entire capital system. Wushuang is standing at the center of the blast, his cultivation leaking away like water from a broken jar. Is this a Pyrrhic victory? Or does the sword god have one final secret hidden in his soul? Join us next time for chapters 256 through 260, as Wushuang and his father fight back-to-back for the first time, and the true identity of the mysterious girl finally changes the fate of the universe. Thank you for listening to Panda Audiobooks. If you're riding with Wushuang until the very end, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell us, was saving his father worth the loss of his powers?